The stars above Earth twinkled like tiny diamonds scattered across a velvet sky. It was a peaceful night, the kind that made people stop and stare, feeling small yet connected to something vast and infinite. But on this particular evening, the calm was about to shatter. In orbit around Earth, an eerie silence filled the void of space as hundreds of massive ships appeared out of nowhere. They were sleek, metallic, and bristling with weapons. The ships belonged to the Valith Dominion, a galactic empire feared throughout the stars for its brutal conquests. For centuries they had swept through galaxies, enslaving weaker species and claiming planets as their own. Now, it seemed, they had set their sights on Earth. Back on the planet's surface, Jamin sat in his dimly lit lab, staring at rows of monitors displaying complex data streams. And he was an engineer, not a soldier, but his work was just as vital to humanity's survival. His job was to develop advanced weaponry systems for Earth's defense grid, a project he had poured years of his life into. Beside him stood Hye-Jin, his colleague and closest friend. She was sharp, quick-witted, and had an uncanny ability to predict enemy moves before they even happened. "Do you think they'll attack tonight?" Hye-Jin asked, her voice steady despite the tension hanging in the air. Jamin shook his head. "I don't know, but if they do, we're ready." He tapped a few keys on his keyboard, bringing up a holographic map of Earth's orbital defenses. Dozens of red dots blinked steadily, marking the positions of satellites armed with cutting-edge lasers and plasma cannons. Beneath the surface, hidden bunkers housed experimental weapons designed to counter any threat. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades, ever since astronomers first detected signs of intelligent alien life. But no amount of preparation could fully ease the fear gripping the hearts of billions. News of the Valith fleet's arrival spread quickly, sparking panic in cities worldwide. People crowded into shelters, prayed in temples, or simply gazed up at the sky, wondering if these would be their final moments. As dawn broke over Seoul, the capital city buzzed with activity. Soldiers marched through the streets, directing civilians to safety zones. Among them was Sua, a fighter pilot known for her fearless flying skills. Her jet-black hair was tied back tightly, and her piercing eyes scanned the horizon for any sign of trouble. Though she tried to focus on her duties, her mind kept drifting to thoughts of her family. Were they safe? Would she see them again? High above the chaos, the Valith fleet loomed ominously. Their leader, Admiral Krythos, stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth rotate slowly below. To him, this blue-green world was nothing more than another conquest, a stepping stone toward greater power. He sneered at the thought of humanity, dismissing them as primitive creatures unworthy of mercy. "Begin the assault!" he commanded coldly. Within moments, the sky lit up with streaks of fire as the Valith launched their first wave of attacks. Massive beams of energy tore through Earth's atmosphere, striking cities and military bases alike. Explosions erupted everywhere, sending plumes of smoke billowing into the air. Buildings crumbled, roads cracked, and screams echoed through the streets. Jamin watched the devastation unfold on his screens, his hands trembling slightly. "They're targeting our infrastructure," he muttered. "If we lose power, we won't be able to activate Eclipse." Hye-Jin placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We can't afford to fail, not now." Eclipse was humanity's last hope, a top-secret weapon capable of obliterating entire fleets in seconds. Developed in secret over the past decade, it relied on harnessing energy from black holes to create a pulse so powerful it could fry every circuit within range. But activating it required precise timing and coordination, which meant Jamin and Hye-Jin had to stay focused despite the chaos unfolding around them. Meanwhile, Sua scrambled into her fighter jet, strapping herself in as alarms blared overhead. Her squadron, nicknamed the Skyblades, awaited her command. Each pilot wore a determined expression, knowing full well the odds stacked against them. Yet none showed fear, not outwardly at least. "Skyblades, move out!" Suwa shouted, her voice crackling through the comms system. With a roar of engines, the jets soared into the sky, heading straight for the invading fleet. Above the clouds, the battle raged fiercely. Suwa's squadron darted between the Valith warships, firing missiles and evading retaliatory blasts. Despite their bravery, the human fighters were vastly outnumbered. One by one, their jets exploded in fiery bursts, leaving fewer and fewer defenders to hold the line. Back in the lab, Jae-min worked frantically to complete the final calibrations for Eclipse. So sweat dripped down his forehead as he typed furiously, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Hyejin monitored the situation outside, relaying updates to him in clipped tones. "They've breached the outer perimeter," she reported grimly. "We're running out of time." "I know," Jae-min replied, his voice strained. "Just give me 2 more minutes." 2 minutes felt like an eternity. Outside, the destruction continued unabated. Fires raged unchecked, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. Yet amidst the carnage, there was also defiance. Civilians banded together to help each other, sharing food and shelter while soldiers fought valiantly to protect them. Humanity refused to go down without a fight. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Jae-min let out a triumphant shout. "It's done! Eclipse is ready!" Hyejin nodded sharply. "Deactivate it, now!" With a deep breath, Jae-min pressed the button. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly the ground trembled as a blinding flash of light erupted from Earth's surface. The pulse surged upward, engulfing the Valith fleet in its deadly embrace. Ships exploded left and right, their hulls melting under the intense energy. Within seconds, half of the invaders' forces were wiped out. Admiral Krythos stared in disbelief as his once mighty armada disintegrated before his eyes. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined humanity capable of such power. Enraged, he ordered his remaining ships to retreat, but not before vowing revenge. As the dust settled, Earth lay scarred but alive. Billions had perished, but billions more remained. And though the cost had been high, his humanity had proven itself stronger than anyone, including the Valith, had anticipated. In the aftermath, Jae-min collapsed into his chair, exhausted but relieved. Hyejin smiled faintly, patting him on the back. "You did it," she said softly. "You saved us." For now, the immediate threat was gone. But both knew this victory came at a price, and that the Valith would return, angrier and more dangerous than ever. Until then, humanity had earned itself a brief reprieve, a chance to rebuild, regroup, and prepare for whatever lay ahead. The aftermath of Eclipse left Earth in a state of shock. Smoke still curled into the sky from burning cities, and the streets were littered with debris. Yet amidst the destruction, there was a flicker of hope. Humanity had struck back against the invaders, and won. For the first time since the Valith fleet appeared, people dared to believe they might survive. Jae-min sat alone in his lab, staring at the glowing monitors before him. The screens displayed the remnants of the alien fleet retreating into the void of space. He should have felt triumphant, but instead, he felt hollow. The faces of those who had died haunted him, the civilians caught in the crossfire, the soldiers who gave their lives defending Earth, and even the pilots whose jets had been blown apart mid-air. He clenched his fists tightly, trying to push away the guilt gnawing at him. Hyejin found him like that, slumped in his chair, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. She placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You did what you had to do," she said softly. "Eclipse saved billions of lives. But at what cost?" Jae-min replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "How many innocent people died because of me?" "It wasn't your fault," Hyejin insisted. "The Valith started this war. You ended it for now. Don't lose sight of that." Her words offered little comfort, but Jae-min nodded anyway. There was no time to dwell on regret. The Valeth weren't gone. They were regrouping. And when they returned, humanity would need every advantage it could muster. Above the chaos on the ground, Su'a soared through the skies in her fighter jet, leading what remained of the Skyblades. Her squadron had been decimated during the initial assault, leaving only a handful of pilots still standing. Despite the losses, Su'a refused to let despair take hold. She knew morale was critical, not just for her team, but for everyone watching from below. "Stay sharp," she barked over the comm system. "We don't know when or where they'll strike next." Her words proved prophetic sooner than expected. As the sun dipped below the horizon, red warning lights flashed across her cockpit display. The Valeth were back, and this time, they weren't holding back. Dozens of ships descended upon Earth once more, unleashing torrents of energy beams and missiles. Cities already battered by the first wave crumbled further under the renewed assault. Fires roared anew, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. It seemed the Valeth had learned from their earlier defeat. Their attacks were more precise, targeting key infrastructure like power plants, communication hubs, and water supplies. On the ground, Jae-min and Hee-jin scrambled to respond. If the Eclipse weapon couldn't be used again so soon, it needed time to recharge. Instead, they turned their attention to Earth's secondary defenses, cloaked orbital platforms equipped with AI-driven combat drones. These machines were designed to operate independently, swarming enemy ships and overwhelming them with sheer numbers. "Activate the drones," Hye-jin ordered, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "We need to buy ourselves some breathing room." Jaemin hesitated. The drones were untested in real combat. If something went wrong, they could end up causing more harm than good. But what choice did they have? With a heavy sigh, he hit the activation button. High above Earth, hundreds of sleek drones materialized out of thin air, their cloaking fields dropping as they locked onto the Valeth fleet. They darted between the massive alien ships, firing lasers and releasing EMP bursts that disabled entire sections of their foes' vessels. The Valeth retaliated fiercely, blasting dozens of drones out of the sky. But for every drone destroyed, 2 more took its place. Su'a watched the battle unfold from her cockpit, marveling at the spectacle. The drones fought with a precision and ferocity that rivaled even the best human pilots. Inspired, she led her squadron into the fray, weaving between the larger ships and picking off stragglers. Together, humans and machines formed an unlikely alliance, pushing back against the invaders. Yet despite their combined efforts, the Valeth pressed on relentlessly. Their flagship, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons, remained untouched, serving as both command center and rallying point for their forces. If humanity hoped to turn the tide, they would need to take it down. "We can't keep this up forever," Hye-jin muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. "If we don't disable that flagship soon, we're finished." Jaemin nodded grimly. An idea began forming in his mind, an audacious plan that could either save them or doom them all. "What if we send someone inside?" he suggested. "A small team could infiltrate the ship and sabotage it from within." Hye-jin stared at him, stunned. "That's suicide." "It's our only chance," Jaemin countered. "Eclipse isn't ready yet, and the drones can't hold them off indefinitely. We need to act now." After a moment of silence, Hye-jin sighed. "Fine, but I'm going with you." "No," Jaemin said firmly. "You're better here. Coordinating the defense. Besides, someone has to make sure Eclipse is ready for round 2. Before she could argue further, alarms blared throughout the lab. A transmission crackled to life on one of the monitors, showing a grainy image of Admiral Krythos aboard his flagship. His cold, reptilian eyes glared directly at the camera. "Humans," he snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. "You've proven yourselves troublesome, but your resistance ends today. Surrender now, or face annihilation." Jaemin exchanged a glance with Hye-jin. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Both knew surrender wasn't an option. Outside, Su'a continued her dogfight against the Valith, dodging blasts and returning fire with equal ferocity. Her squadron was dwindling fast, but she refused to retreat. But every second she stayed in the air bought precious time for Jae-min and Hyejin to prepare their counterattack. Finally, the infiltration team was assembled. Alongside Jae-min were 3 elite soldiers chosen for their skills and bravery. They boarded a stealth shuttle disguised as debris from the earlier battles, slipping past the Valith fleet undetected. As they approached the flagship, tension filled the cramped cabin. None of them knew what awaited them inside, but all were determined to see the mission through. Back on Earth, Hyejin monitored their progress anxiously. "Be careful," she whispered under her breath, though she knew they couldn't hear her. "Come back alive." As the shuttle docked with the flagship, the team prepared to disembark. Jae-min took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. The interior of the Valith flagship was a labyrinth of cold metallic corridors, bathed in dim red light. The air smelled faintly of oil and electricity, and the hum of machinery echoed endlessly. Jae-min and his team moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick soles of their boots. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down not just by their gear, but by the knowledge that failure meant certain death, for them and for billions back on Earth. Leading the group was Sergeant Min-soo, a grizzled veteran with sharp instincts honed from years of combat. Beside him was Lieutenant Yoon-ji, a quick-thinking tactician who specialized in hacking alien systems. Bringing up the rear was Private Ji-hoon, a young soldier whose quiet determination masked his fear. Together, they formed a tight-knit unit, each member relying on the others to survive. Jae-min, though not trained for combat, carried a crucial piece of equipment. A portable EMP device designed to disable the flagship's core reactor. If successful, it would cripple the entire fleet, giving humanity a fighting chance. But first, they had to reach the reactor, and getting there wouldn't be easy. As they navigated the twisting passages, they encountered patrols of Valith soldiers. These aliens were tall and reptilian, their scaly skin glinting under the low lights. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, as if every action had been drilled into them over countless battles. The humans froze whenever one passed nearby, holding their breaths until the danger passed. At one point, Yoon-ji knelt beside a control panel embedded in the wall, and her fingers danced across her handheld device, interfacing with the alien system. After a tense moment, she nodded. "This route should take us closer to the reactor," she whispered, "but we'll need to move fast. They're on to us." Sure enough, alarms began blaring moments later. Red lights flashed overhead, bathing the corridors in an ominous glow. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind them as Valith reinforcements closed in. "Run!" Min-soo barked, taking charge. The team sprinted forward, their hearts pounding in unison. Behind them, plasma bolts zipped past, striking the walls and leaving scorch marks. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with another patrol. Without hesitation, Min-soo raised his weapon and fired, cutting down 2 of the aliens before they could react. Ji-hoon followed suit, and his aim shaky but effective. Yoon-ji ducked behind cover, deploying a small drone that emitted a high-pitched frequency. The noise disoriented the remaining Valith, buying the team precious seconds to escape. Back on Earth, Hyejin monitored their progress anxiously. She watched live feeds transmitted from cameras mounted on their helmets, her fingers hovering over the keyboard as she coordinated support. "You're doing great," she said into the comms system. "Keep moving. You're almost there." But the praise did little to ease Jae-min's nerves. He clutched the EMP device tightly, aware of the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders. If he failed, everything humanity had fought for would be lost. Meanwhile, Sua led her squadron in a desperate bid to distract the Vayleth fleet. Her sky blades launched wave after wave of attacks, then targeting smaller ships to draw attention away from the flagship. Though vastly outnumbered, their relentless assaults kept the enemy occupied, giving the infiltration team a slim chance of success. "Hold the line!" Sua shouted over the comms. Her voice was steady despite the chaos around her. Explosions lit up the sky as missiles streaked through the air, and the roar of engines drowned out all other sounds. Yet through it all, Sua remained focused, her eyes locked on the horizon. Inside the flagship, the infiltration team finally reached the reactor chamber. It was a massive room dominated by a pulsating sphere of energy suspended in midair. Thick cables snaked along the walls, feeding power to the ship's systems. The sight was awe-inspiring and terrifying. "This is it," Jae-min said, his voice barely audible over the hum of the reactor. "Set the charges." Yoonji and Ji-hoon sprang into action, planting explosives at key points around the chamber. Meanwhile, Min-soo stood guard, his weapon trained on the entrance. His sharp eyes scanned the shadows, searching for any sign of movement. Suddenly, the doors slid open, revealing a squad of Vaylith soldiers. Min-soo opened fire immediately, cutting down several before they could react. But more poured in, their weapons blazing. The humans returned fire, exchanging blasts of energy in a deadly dance. "Hurry!" Min-soo yelled, his voice strained. "We can't hold them off forever!" Yoonji worked frantically, her hands trembling as she set the final charge. "Done!" she shouted, backing away from the reactor. "Fall back!" Jae-min ordered, clutching the EMP device. He activated it, sending a surge of energy rippling through the chamber. Lights flickered, and the hum of the reactor grew louder, threatening to overload. The Vaylith soldiers hesitated, confused by the sudden disruption. Seizing the opportunity, the team made a break for the exit. They ran as fast as their legs could carry them, dodging blasts and leaping over fallen debris. Behind them, the reactor began to destabilize. A deep rumble shook the ship, growing louder with each passing second. Alarms screamed throughout the corridors, warning of imminent destruction. "We're not going to make it," Ji-hoon gasped, his face pale with fear. "Yes, we are," Min-soo snapped, grabbing him by the arm. "Keep moving!" Finally, they reached the shuttle bay. The stealth shuttle awaited them, its engines already warming up. One by one, they scrambled aboard, or collapsing into their seats as the hatch sealed shut. "Go, go, go!" Jae-min shouted, his voice hoarse. The pilot didn't need to be told twice. With a roar of engines, the shuttle shot out of the bay, narrowly avoiding a blast from a pursuing Vaylith fighter. Behind them, the flagship erupted in a spectacular explosion, sending shockwaves rippling through space. Debris scattered in all directions, colliding with nearby ships and causing further destruction. On Earth, Hae-jin watched the flagship's demise with a mixture of relief and sorrow. "They did it," she murmured, tears welling in her eyes. "They actually did it." Sua saw the explosion too, her heart swelling with pride. The Vaylith fleet began retreating, their morale shattered by the loss of their command ship. For now, humanity had won. But victory came at a cost. As the shuttle limped back toward Earth, Jae-min stared out the window, his mind heavy with thoughts of those who hadn't made it. Min-soo sat beside him, his expression grim but resolute. "We'll remember them," he said quietly. "Every single one." Jae-min nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. The battle might be over, but the war was far from won. Humanity had proven itself strong, but the galaxy was vast, and the Vaylith weren't the only threat lurking among the stars. The victory was bittersweet. The Vaylith fleet had retreated, their flagship reduced to a cloud of debris drifting through space. But the cost of that triumph weighed heavily on everyone. Back on Earth, cities lay in ruins, and millions mourned the loss of loved ones. Among them was Jae-min, who struggled to find peace despite knowing his actions had saved billions. or in the days following the battle, humanity worked tirelessly to rebuild. Engineers like Jae-min turned their attention to repairing damaged infrastructure, while soldiers patrolled the streets, ensuring order amidst the chaos. Yet even as life slowly returned to normal, the shadow of the Valith loomed large. Everyone knew this wasn't the end. It was only a matter of time before they returned. Hye-jin spent most of her time analyzing data from the battle, searching for clues about the Valith's next move. She pored over intercepted transmissions and studied fragments of alien technology recovered from the wreckage. Her efforts paid off when she stumbled upon something unexpected, a fragment of an ancient text buried deep within Earth's archives. "Jae-min," she called out, her voice tinged with excitement. You need to see this." He joined her at the workstation, peering at the glowing screen. The text was written in a language long forgotten by most humans, but Hye-jin had managed to translate parts of it. It spoke of a distant past, thousands of years ago, when humanity first encountered the Valith. Back then, Earth was far less advanced. Its people scattered across tribes and nations. The Valith had arrived, studied humanity briefly, and deemed them unworthy of conquest. They left without incident, leaving behind only cryptic warnings carved into stone tablets. "They thought we were weak," Hye-jin said, her eyes gleaming. "But now look at us. We've grown stronger, smarter. That's why they're afraid." Jae-min frowned. "Afraid? Of us?" "Yes," she replied. "Think about it. They didn't come here just to conquer. They came to test us. To see if we posed a threat to their empire. And now that they know what we're capable of, they'll stop at nothing to destroy us." Her words sent a chill down Jae-min's spine. If true, it meant humanity's fight was far from over. The Valith wouldn't rest until Earth was nothing more than a memory. Meanwhile, Sua continued leading the Skyblades, training new recruits to replace those lost in the battle. Her squadron had become symbols of hope, their bravery inspiring others to join the fight. Yet despite her outward confidence, Sua carried a burden few understood. She had seen too much death, too much destruction. Each night, she stared at the stars, wondering how many more battles lay ahead. One evening, as she walked along the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean, she noticed a figure standing nearby. It was Kale, a defector from the Valith ranks, who had sought asylum on Earth after the flagship's destruction. His presence had sparked controversy among world leaders, but Sua had taken it upon herself to ensure his safety. Something about him intrigued her, not just his knowledge of the enemy, but the sadness in his eyes. "You shouldn't be out here alone," she said, approaching cautiously. Kale turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Neither should you." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the waves crash against the rocks below. Finally, Kale spoke. "Your people are remarkable," he said softly. "Brave, resourceful. No wonder the Emperor fears you." Sua raised an eyebrow. "And what about you? Do you fear us too?" Kale hesitated before answering. "I respect you. That's why I chose to defect. My people, they've grown complacent, arrogant. They see strength only in numbers, in brute force. But you fight with heart, with purpose." His words lingered in the air, giving Sua pause. For the first time, she saw Kale not as an enemy, but as someone searching for redemption. Perhaps there was still hope for change, even among the Valith. Back at headquarters, Jae-min and Hye-jin devised a daring plan to infiltrate the remaining Valith forces. Using cloaking technology stolen from the flagship, they hoped to board one of their ships undetected and gather intelligence on their plans. It was a risky mission, but necessary if humanity hoped to stay one step ahead. "I'm going with you," Hye-jin insisted when Jae-min tried to dissuade her. "No," he replied firmly. "Someone needs to stay here and coordinate the operation. Besides, you're better at analyzing data than I am." Reluctantly, Hyejin agreed, though her worry was evident. As Jaemin prepared to leave, she pulled him aside. "Promise me you'll come back," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I promise," he replied, forcing a smile, but deep down he wasn't sure he could keep that vow. The infiltration team consisted of Jaemin, Min-soo, and Kale, whose knowledge of Valith protocols proved invaluable. Disguised as debris, their shuttle slipped past enemy defenses and docked with a massive cruiser orbiting the moon. Inside, the corridors were eerily quiet, the crew seemingly unaware of their presence. Using Kyle's guidance, they navigated toward the ship's command center. Along the way, they encountered automated drones and security systems, which they disabled using EMP devices. But as they neared their destination, they were ambushed by a squad of Valith soldiers. Min-soo took charge, barking orders as they fought back. Plasma bolts zipped past, striking walls and consoles. Kyle surprised everyone by wielding a weapon with surprising skill, cutting down several enemies before they could react. Despite their efforts, the odds were against them. "We can't hold them off," Min-soo shouted, firing wildly. "Keep moving," Jaemin yelled, clutching a data drive containing critical information. "We're almost there!" With one final push, they reached the command center. Jaemin plugged the drive into a terminal, downloading files at lightning speed. Behind them, the Valith closed in, their weapons trained on the intruders. "This is it," Min-soo said grimly, raising his weapon. "Hey, make it count!" Jaemin finished the download just as the doors burst open. A hail of plasma bolts filled the room, striking Min-soo squarely in the chest. He collapsed without a sound, his sacrifice buying Jaemin and Kale enough time to escape. Back on Earth, Hyejin watched the transmission cut off, her heart sinking. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. But then, against all odds, Jaemin's voice crackled over the comms. "We got it," he said, his tone weary but triumphant. "Mission accomplished." As the shuttle limped back toward Earth, Jaemin sat in silence, mourning the loss of his friend. Min-soo's bravery had saved them, and his memory would live on in the hearts of those who remained. For now, humanity had won another battle, but the war was far from over. The sun rose over a scarred but resilient Earth. And the wounds of war were still fresh, etched into the landscape and the hearts of its people. Yet amidst the ruins, there was hope, a fragile, flickering flame that refused to be extinguished. Humanity had faced the Valith, fought them with everything they had, and emerged victorious. But the cost of that victory weighed heavily on everyone. Jaemin stood on a hill overlooking what remained of Seoul. Once a bustling metropolis, it was now a patchwork of rubble and makeshift shelters. The air smelled of ash and determination, a strange mix that seemed to define this new chapter of human history. He clutched a small device in his hand, the data drive containing the intelligence gathered during the infiltration mission. It held secrets about the Valith Empire, their weaknesses, and their plans. On secrets that could ensure humanity's survival, or doom it if misused. Hyejin approached him quietly, her footsteps soft against the dry earth. She had been distant since Min-soo's death, retreating into her work as a way to cope. But today, she looked different, less burdened, more resolute. "We've analyzed the data," she said, her voice steady. "It confirms what we suspected. The Valith see us as a threat to their dominance. They won't stop until we're gone." Jaemin nodded grimly. "Then we'll make sure they regret underestimating us." Kyle had also become an integral part of humanity's efforts. His defection had sparked skepticism at first, but his contributions quickly earned him trust. He worked alongside Hyejin, sharing knowledge about Valith technology and tactics. Together, they devised strategies to fortify Earth's defenses and prepare for the inevitable counterattack. Kyle often spoke of the Vaylith Emperor, a ruthless leader who viewed other species as tools or obstacles, nothing more. To him, humanity's defiance was both infuriating and fascinating. Su'a, meanwhile, continued training the next generation of pilots. Her squadron had grown, bolstered by volunteers eager to protect their home. Among them was Ji-hoon, the young soldier who had survived the flagship mission. Though still haunted by the horrors he'd witnessed, he found solace in serving alongside Su'a. Her unwavering courage inspired him to push past his fears. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Su'a gathered her team for a briefing. "The Vaylith are regrouping," she began, her tone serious. Their fleet is larger than ever, and they're building something big. We don't know what it is yet, but we need to be ready." "What's the plan?" Ji-hoon asked, his voice tinged with nervousness. "We hit them before they hit us," Su'a replied. "We strike deep into their territory, targeting key installations. If we can cripple their supply lines, we might buy ourselves enough time to finish upgrading Eclipse." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. This wasn't just another battle. It was a suicide mission. But no one objected. They all knew the stakes. Back at headquarters, Jae-min and Hye-jin finalized preparations for the assault. Eclipse had been upgraded using the intelligence gathered from the Vaylith, making it more powerful and precise. Its energy pulse could now target specific ships or structures without causing collateral damage. It was a weapon unlike any other, a testament to humanity's ingenuity and resilience. As the launch date approached, tensions ran high. Soldiers checked their gear obsessively, while engineers double-checked every system. Leaders delivered speeches meant to inspire, though their own fears lingered beneath the surface. Humanity was gambling everything on this final stand. On the day of the attack, Su'a led her squadron into space, flanked by cloaked orbital platforms and AI-driven drones. Their destination was a massive shipyard orbiting a distant moon, where the Vaylith were constructing a superweapon capable of annihilating entire planets. If completed, it would spell doom for Earth. "Stay sharp," Su'a commanded over the comms. "This is it." The battle began with a barrage of missiles and energy beams. Human fighters darted between the enemy ships, drawing fire and creating openings for the drones to exploit. Explosions lit up the void of space, casting eerie shadows across the battlefield. Despite their bravery, the humans were outnumbered and outgunned. Ships exploded around them, sending debris spiraling into the darkness. Inside the shipyard, Jae-min and Kale infiltrated the facility, planting explosives at critical points. Their progress was slow and perilous, hindered by automated defenses and Vaylith patrols. At one point, they were cornered in a narrow corridor, forced to fight their way out. Kyle proved invaluable, his combat skills rivaling those of the best human soldiers. "We're running out of time," Jae-min said, checking his watch. "See, Eclipse will fire in 5 minutes." Kale nodded, his expression grim. "Let's finish this." They reached the control room just as the countdown reached 0. Outside, Eclipse unleashed its devastating pulse, obliterating the shipyard and crippling the surrounding fleet. The shockwave rippled through space, shaking the very foundations of the Vaylith Empire. Admiral Krithos watched in horror as his forces disintegrated before his eyes. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Could humanity truly pose a lasting threat? Before he could act, his flagship was struck by a stray blast, killing him instantly. Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread like wildfire. People poured into the streets, cheering and embracing one another. Fireworks lit up the night sky, celebrating not just survival, but triumph. And humanity had proven itself stronger than anyone, including the Vaylith, had imagined. But amidst the celebrations, Jae-min sat alone in his lab, staring at the monitors. The war was over, but the scars remained. He thought of Min-soo, Hye-jin, and all the others who had sacrificed so much. Their legacy would live on, not just in stories, but in the strength and unity of humanity. Hye Jin joined him after a while, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We did it," she said softly. "We saved Earth." Jaemin nodded, managing a faint smile. "And we'll keep saving it, for as long as it takes." In the weeks that followed, Earth began to heal. Cities were rebuilt, families reunited, and lives slowly pieced back together. Kale integrated into human society, teaching others about the stars and the lessons he had learned. Isua continued leading her squadron, instilling in them the same courage and determination that had carried her through the war. Humanity looked toward the future with cautious optimism. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious. Though the galaxy was vast and filled with dangers, they were no longer afraid. They were survivors, warriors, dreamers, and they were ready for whatever lay ahead.